Welcome to this video where I explain how you can pass the ICAEW's Audit and Assurance exam. This is a difficult exam because you are sitting other exams with it, but this video will give you some tips that will hopefully help make the exam process better and for you to gain the high marks that you want in the exam. So let's look at the key examinable syllabus. You have 3 areas that are examined. You have legal and other professional ethics, accepting and managing engagements and current issues for 35%. You then have planning and performing engagements for 40%, and then concluding and reporting on engagements for 25%. The format of the exam is, in question 1, you will have 6 short form questions worth 20 marks, and then 3 long form questions totaling 100 for about 1 is for 40 marks, and then you have 2 for about 20 marks. You could also have this, because it varies, the 40 marker is sometimes 38, and then you have 22 and 20. It just depends on the way that the exam is set up. Having said that it can be difficult to pass when you are sitting other exams, it is one of the easier exams to pass because the mark scheme just has so many easy marks that you can obtain if you just show good exam technique. One thing I would mention about this exam is the inflow part, or the data analytics, is an integral part of the exam, but can be an area where you will lose a lot of time if you haven't practiced with inflow. So if you are wanting to do the DAS bit for the 10 to 12 marks, then I recommend that you play around with the different data sets on the practice platform and are comfortable looking for transactions and doing things on inflow. Moving on, we'll look at the long form questions. And really the long form questions require practice and getting used to the questioning style. When you are answering the long form questions, you want to make sure that you're thinking your answers through, and you make sure what you write is both logical and linked to the scenario, because the examiner wants you to use the scenario and pull out the information from the scenario. You also want to make sure that you are tailoring your answers, right? Because that shows application of knowledge. Generic point may not cut it, but you at least don't have any negative marking, so you can write them out regardless as long as they're sensible. You have the main question on audit risks and procedures, and every exam will ask you about audit risks, either audit risks or inherent risks, or risks, generally audit risks. And the way that it's examined is either you're justifying the key audit risks, and they're stated as 1, 2, 3 on different accounting areas, or you are to identify the risks yourself. Now, when you want to explain to somebody why something is risky, you must first of all go back to materiality. It's material. For what reason is it material, either quantitatively or qualitatively? You want to talk about whether, based on ISA 315, the revised version, where there's judgments involved or estimates involved, and that's why it's a risky area. Or it's a complex balance. Or, there are no effective internal controls within the area. If there are numbers in the scenario, you got to make sure that you're using them to justify and make your point as to why something is a key audit risk. Okay, and you must also mention them probably in the order of how you think they're more significant or not. But if you've got the 1, 2, 3s to just address each area separately, pull this information out from the scenario. You will then be asked about procedures to address these risks. Think through what would be helpful and logical, and make sure a procedure tells someone the action, the objective, and the source. What to do, why they're doing it, where they're going to find the information, or what document they need to be searching for. Okay, there can be a smaller ethics portion mixed in over here to make up the 38/40 marks. So ethics is definitely going to be examined either as a larger question or as parts of smaller questions. So make sure that you are on point with that. So yeah, as I said, there could be particular accounting areas where you might have to write audit risks for. So practice questions that do ask you for both of them. On the screen is an example. Make sure that you pause this and you read through it, but just how people have addressed a bad addressing of an audit risk and a better addressing of it. The main thing is you can pull out ideas from ISA 500 with your ICAEW, and then you should be using verbs like obtain, verify, assess, challenge, inspect, trace, and then adding specific information from the scenario should help you write complete procedures to address the particular risk. Now you got to be careful, because if something relates to a particular assertion, then make sure that you're not writing procedures that do not relate to that assertion. Okay, so if it's valuation of inventory, then no one is concerned about existence. You want to write about the valuation. All right, so something along those lines. The reporting and completion question on your exam will definitely be there as well. Make sure you understand whether an assignment that you are writing an answer for is an audit, is a review, or it's some other agreed upon procedure engagement. Consider the audit reporting tables that you must have studied, and if you haven't, just look at how audit reporting is done. Make sure you know it well. Your approach should be to explain the materiality of something, what kind of an accounting issue it is, and then the kind of reporting consequence that it will have. In your answer, explain always the modification and the title of the basis for opinion paragraph that will be, written to explain the modification. Questions will either give you details about management refusing to make changes, which means you have a very clear-cut answer and opinion/conclusion that you can give. Otherwise, you might want to consider all of the possible logical linked situations that are arising from the scenario and the possible avenues that the auditor can go through. So could they give an unmodified opinion? Okay, could they give, some other kind of opinion? So you'd want to go through that. In terms of if ethics, professional issues, acceptance, and responsibilities is examined as a larger question, this will feature with various parts mixed inside it. Fraud and money laundering regulations you should know really well. Who's responsible for fraud, what kind of responsibilities the auditor has. So that's ISA 240. Make sure you know that really well. When you're explaining ethical threats, make sure you are identifying the threat and then explaining why it's a threat. Because don't just tell me something is a threat. Tell me why it's a threat. What's it affecting? How is it going to impact, my audit or the riskiness of this area or the riskiness of this audit? Is it not in line with quality procedures? So you might have ISQM1 or ISA 220 that is not being followed, or it's simply something to do with compliance. So, what is it? Some of the threats that students often confuse are familiarity and self-interest. So make sure you do lots of practice questions on these. If you have internal control and deficiencies recommendations questions, make sure you explain again why something is a deficiency and then provide a control as a recommendation, or you could be providing a recommendation of something that lowers the control risk, right? Like you've said, hi, here's the deficiency in your system. Okay, now tell me how to fix it. That's what the recommendation should be. I would recommend using 2 columns to do this, just because it makes sure that you don't forget writing a recommendation for the deficiency. Also makes it a little bit easier to mark for the marker. You can practice this within the practice platform. So I suggest you do that before the exam so you don't panic on how to do it, because it's kind of like Word. You got to click on it and then you're able to do it. But, a little practice never hurt anyone. In terms of timings, obviously, you can start the exam in any order that you want. I would personally do the short form questions first because I know I've got 20 marks boxed off. If I really believe that I'm going to run over time with the data analytics software, I will also leave that for the last. You can see that on the face of the exam, what question it's a part of. And then you have the different timings for the different areas. So about an hour for the 40-mark question, about half an hour for the 20-mark questions overall. I think everyone who does enough exam practice is able to pass this exam. It has a really good pass rate. It has really good marking schemes that offer you lots of marks, like 13 marks, but you're maxing out at 3, or 38 marks, but the maximum is 12. And remember, you don't need to achieve the maximum. You just need to pass at 55%. So you can do this. There's plenty of marks available. Make sure you're formatting your answers so that they're easy to read. Use headings, use subheadings. The short form questions allow phrases, not the rest. So make sure you're using phrases in the short form questions to save time. And then when you get to the long form questions, make sure you're actually explaining enough. So read the verb. If it says explain, explain. If it says justify, justify. Similarly, in the short form question, if it says list, just list. So just make sure you're reading the verb and really understanding the requirement. I hope this helps you. Good luck with your exams. And if you have any questions, you can post them over here. Thank you very much.